Hello everybody. So obviously I wanted to get this video out initially on New Year's, but clearly that did not happen. But that is in large part due to the fact that I saw a lot of movies in 2023. Not as many as I saw last year. There's only 75 in this video. Last year I believe it was 78. But still, that's a whole lot of movies to talk about. Too many movies to talk about and do sort of a similar video to what I did last year. Last year's video, if you remember, that was nearly a 45-minute video that took me a long time to edit and everything. And this year, I just did not have as much time to put everything together and make it as flashy as it was last year. But I still wanted to do a video. I still wanted to make a video talking about all these movies that I saw this year, both the good ones and the bad ones, and everything in between, because you don't just see 75 movies and not find a way to talk about it and make it everyone else's problem. Real quick, these are all the movies that I did not get a chance to check out this year for one reason or another. I feel like some of these will definitely change my rankings quite a bit, especially Godzilla Minus One. That is one that I really wanted to check out, but I just did not get the opportunity to go see it in theaters, which is where I really wanted to see it. Maybe closer to Oscars, I will do a follow-up video reviewing the movies I missed, maybe a catch-up video, an updated ranking, but these are the movies that I did not get to check out. Everything else that I've seen this year, though, is up on the table, so let's get into them. I never thought I'd see the day when an M. Night Shyamalan film would crack my top 10 best of the year list. Not to say I haven't enjoyed some of his recent works. Again, some of them, but I wouldn't say they were anywhere near the quality of his earlier stuff. That is until I saw Knock at the Cabin, a truly engaging, suspenseful, and at times thought-provoking thriller that has some of the best performances I've seen in a Shyamalan film. Dave Bautista surprised the hell out of me with his performance, and it cemented to me just how great him and Cena really are compared to someone like The Rock, as they are much more willing to take risk and play against type. Obviously, it is a Shyamalan movie at the end of the day, so it still has some wonky dialogue and cliches, but for me, this was a really overlooked movie from this year, and I hope it gets more recognition as the years go on. I feel like everyone really turned on Evil Dead Rise after it was released, and I don't quite understand why. Sure, it doesn't really do anything new with the formula other than setting the film in an apartment complex over the traditional cabin in the woods, but I think the Evil Dead franchise is so much fun as a concept that even if it's been done before, it's still highly entertaining. The direction here was really solid from Lee Cronin, and Alyssa Sutherland really steals the show as the best antagonist in the whole franchise. There was tons of great gore and some really fun set pieces that made this one of my favorite the franchise has to offer. So, I'll be honest when I say that I've never been crazy about the John Wick franchise. Not to say the movies were bad, but something about them really did nothing for me. So when I say that John Wick Chapter 4 is the best action film of the year, I truly mean it. I was so hesitant about the nearly 3-hour runtime, but the film is paced so magnificently, and the action scenes are so damn good that you don't even feel the length while you're watching it. It's hard to pick which sequence was the best for me, the aerial one take, the staircase fight, the car chase at the Arc de Triomphe. They were all incredibly well shot and edited and choreographed and so damn memorable. On top of the great action, they finally have engaging character stuff to work with as well. Not only does it feel like John's story comes to a satisfying end, but new inclusions like Donnie Yen just made this film feel like a much needed breath of fresh air. Holy shit, you guys, Bottoms was so freaking good. I love absurdist comedies, so this was right up my alley. Just a purely entertaining movie from start to finish, and one of my favorite casts of the year. Rachel Sennott and Ayo Edebiri were fantastic and carried this movie on their shoulders. Their banter led to some of my favorite line deliveries from this year. The supporting cast is on fire from top to bottom, and each one of them knows exactly how to play the parts without being too tongue-in-cheek. I need to give a special shout out to Marshawn Lynch. He was incredible in this movie, and I was so amazed to see him be so perfect in this role. I really hope to see him in more comedies, and I really hope to see more stuff like this from this creative team. Look, was Cocaine Bear a good movie? No, not really. But was it the most fun I had at a movie theater all year? Absolutely. I know the whole joke of a bear on cocaine gets a little played out, but the movie was just one of those turn your brain off and have a good time type films. And I just had a total blast, and I feel no shame having it as high on my list. I don't think enough people talk about how great the Creed movies are, and it's kind of a miracle they are as such. They're legacy sequels to a franchise that admittedly hasn't been consistently good since 1979, but what Creed understood was the first two Rocky movies work because they were about the characters, not the fighting. The first Creed understood that, Creed 2 leaned a little too heavily into the Rocky lore, but Creed 3 really found the perfect balance, and I think it's honestly the best Rocky movie since the original. And he's not even in it, which, yes, I do think is for the better. Michael B. Jordan, despite this being his first time directing, directs the absolute shit out of this movie. Seriously, the final boxing sequences between him and Majors is one of the best scenes of the year. Speaking of Majors, I know his career is basically over, but for this film, he really was fantastic, and I think him and Jordan are the perfect foils for one another. I really hope that this is where the series ends, because this feels like a perfect conclusion, and the last thing we need is for this series to have a fourth installment like the last fourth installment. A new holiday classic in the making, because The Holdovers is such a warm and wonderful movie. What I mean by that is, it's just a movie that gives you this nice, cozy, warm feeling, like a freshly knit sweater. It's such a simple movie, and I think that's what makes it even better. There were so many points in this movie I thought they would make some cliched decision or throw in pointless conflicts, but that's not what happens at all, because it doesn't need to. It's so much more human to just have these three characters being characters with each other. They don't need some big third act blowout and have to reconcile. Sure, they argue and bicker, get mad at each other, but they get over it, they move on, they keep going like, well, real people. And that's so much more engaging. Dominic Sessa is such a promising young star, and I really can't wait to see what he does next. Davine Joy Randolph is the emotional heart of the film, and I don't see enough people singing her praises, but we have to give it up for the absolute goat of this movie, Paul Giamatti. He is magnificent, easily the highlight of his career, and if he doesn't take home the Oscar this year, it'll be an absolute crime. Of all the films this year, the one that inspired me the most is Talk to Me. I love Raka Raka, and I've been watching them since I was in high school, so to see all their years of hard work pay off and seeing the starts of their promising careers is nothing short of awe-inspiring. Talk to Me is just expertly crafted and such a breath of fresh air to the horror genre. An excellent film with some spectacular directing and the MVP of newcomers this year in Sophie Wilde, who is just so damn good in this. I can't really express why this movie works so well, it just makes me emotional to see these creators I love so much making some high quality that reminds me why I wanted to be a filmmaker in the first place. Alan alone secured this movie the #2 spot. I love that guy. But Barbie was so much fun. I really can't believe a Barbie movie is this fucking good, but that's exactly what it is. So fucking good. Margot Robbie is perfection. Ryan Gosling is perfection. This whole cast is perfection. Not a single person felt out of place or miscast. Everyone brought something of value to the movie. However, the highlight of the movie, for me at least, is the emotional center of it all. Barbie's journey is so powerful, and the final sequence with that amazing Billie Eilish song, it was simply beautiful. I would say go check out Barbie, but you all saw the box office and know you already did. So I should preface that animators deserve to be treated fairly and not to have to put up with harsh and cruel working conditions. And I hope with the sequel that they're given time to breathe and get the proper fair treatment they deserve. Also, union strong. This was a good year for unions. Let's keep it going into 2024. But with all that being said, Across the Spider-Verse is my favorite film of the year. It was just so good. I really loved the first Spider-Verse, and this movie just amplified what made the first so amazing. The animation is beautiful and unlike any other film I have seen before. The writing and the story is wonderfully constructed, without feeling incomplete. Just a fantastic film and a reminder to why animation is such a powerful medium to begin with. And that's my best films of the year, but obviously I saw a lot more movies, so here are just a few honorable mentions. These are in no particular order, just every other good thing I saw that didn't make the top 10 for one reason or another. Oppenheimer was obviously very close to cracking the top 10, and I'm sure it would be if I sat on this video for a little bit longer. Scream 6 was a really solid entry in the franchise, and as the final Scream film, it was a pretty decent note to end on. Thanksgiving was also a really fun slasher and the best Eli Roth movie to date. Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was the best Hunger Games movie. I marathoned all of them in preparation for Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and this new one was probably my favorite. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Blue Beetle reminded me that comic book movies can actually be emotional and fun, as well as being really good at the same time. Air was a surprisingly entertaining biopic movie. Hell House LLC Origins was a return to form for one of my favorite found footage franchises, and I also got to talk to the director this year, which was pretty cool as well. Mutant Mayhem was a real surprise and a lot of fun. I think it's the best Ninja Turtles movie. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning was a treat, and probably the film I'm most disappointed to have seen underperform this year. Killers of the Flower Moon was the best Scorsese film in years. I enjoyed it much more than The Irishman, and the 3.5-hour runtime did not bother me in the slightest. May December was a really wonderful dark comedy drama that made my skin crawl, but in the best way possible. Joyride was a great road trip comedy that I didn't hear a lot of people talking about. No Hard Feelings made me want to see Jennifer Lawrence in more comedies, and honestly just more R-rated comedies in general. Saw X was the best Saw movie, but I don't particularly care for the franchise to begin with, so take that with a grain of salt. A Haunting in Venice I really enjoyed, despite not really caring for the previous two films before it. I think Kenneth Branagh does some really interesting directing here that I think made me enjoy this otherwise pretty by-the-numbers murder mystery. Sisu was a fun 90-minute excuse to watch Nazis getting murdered, as if you really need an excuse for that. It's a Wonderful Knife was good until the third act kind of fell apart, but I still really enjoyed those first two acts.
Have you seen the new FNAF trailer?
Dream Scenario had a really interesting concept, but I think they took the most boring route to go about it. But the Nicolas Cage performance was really solid, so I forgive some of its faults. Dumb Money wasn't particularly well directed, but the cast was really strong and made it much more entertaining. The Blackening relied a little too heavily on the same joke over and over again, but still got enough chuckles out of me. Dungeons & Dragons really should have made more money if Paramount wasn't a completely incompetent studio. I kind of wish that this franchise would continue, but I know that's not going to happen. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret was a movie clearly not made for me, but I still thought it was a really charming coming-of-age film. I actually didn't mind Haunted Mansion. It wasn't great, but I liked it more than the last two Pirates of the Caribbean movies or Jungle Cruise, so that's something. If Last Voyage of the Demeter was about 20 minutes shorter, I think it would have been a lot better, but it had some great atmosphere to boot, and I just enjoy gothic horror. Malum was a nice surprise and had some insane practical effects. I haven't seen the original film that this movie is apparently a remake of, and I do kind of want to check out that original and compare, but as it stands, Malum was pretty entertaining, and The Pope's Exorcist just made me laugh. Also, in the process of editing this video, I also checked out Saltburn, and it's around this area as well. I didn't particularly care for it, but it was a very beautiful looking movie with some really great performances, and Emerald Fennell is one of my favorite directors working in Hollywood, so it was still a relatively enjoyable time. But that was all the movies that I really enjoyed or I would consider good from this year. So now we have to get into the ones that I don't think are good. And again, I need to preface that this is all subjective. If you disagree with me, that is completely fine. Film is subjective. Opinions are subjective. So if you disagree with me, be civil. Write in the comments. Just say you disagree or explain why you like that movie or you disagree with me. But anyways, now let's get into my bottom 10 of the year. I won't deny that a large chunk of the hate for this movie are just racist assholes, but that still doesn't mean this movie was that good. It's a perfect summary of the Disney remakes and why they just don't work. They drag out an 83-minute film to 2 hours and 20 minutes and somehow have less substance than the original. It does nothing new, and any changes made are frankly for the worse. I will say that Halle Bailey is wonderful in the role, and her singing voice is unmatched. It is a clear reason why she was cast, and honestly, I really wish her nothing but success in her future film endeavors. I just wish that she was given an actual script to work with. Some truly awful CGI and some career worst performances for actors like Javier Bardem and Melissa McCarthy make this not as bad as Beauty and the Beast, but still one of the worst of the Disney live-action remakes we've gotten so far. So remember how I said Spider-Verse was part 1 of a two-parter but ended in a satisfying way? Well, Fast X said fuck right off and just made an incomplete movie. And even if this was a standalone film, it's just so stupid. It's too stupid. And I know that these Fast and Furious movies are trying to embrace their wilder aspects, but at this point it just feels lazy. Things just happen and characters do things that are so far out of the realm of reality that there are simply no stakes. We feel absolutely no sense of danger because everyone is invulnerable and they just come back from the dead anyways. And some of these characters need to be killed off. Like, the cast of these movies have become so damn bloated, and the ending of this movie promises to bring even more characters back. I have absolutely no hope for the next film, and if Vin Diesel lets his ego get the better of him and doesn't bring back Jason Momoa, then there's actually no reason to keep giving this franchise the time of day, because Jason Momoa, frankly, is the only reason this one was even slightly worth checking out. So I already have a much longer review of this one, so I'll keep this brief, but of all the films I saw this year, this is the one that made me feel the most upset. I was really trying to enjoy Dial of Destiny, but the soulless nature of it all and the underwhelming ending to one of the best characters in fiction just frankly bummed me out. I know many will disagree with me that this is worse than Crystal Skull, but at least that film did a better job ending Indiana Jones' story than having him be sad in his sweatpants. I kind of feel bad ragging on Zack Snyder because he clearly is a guy who's passionate about all the projects he works on, and he seems like a really nice guy. However, he just makes the most hollow movies ever. They're always visually stunning, but from a writing and character standpoint, they are so damn forgettable. And Rebel Moon is only the latest offering in a sea of mediocrity. At least when he was working with DC, there was a reason to have stuff be so unoriginal. You know, it was based on previous source material. But here he is so blatantly stealing from other sci-fi franchises that you honestly wonder why he didn't just do that Henry Cavill Warhammer movie, or just jump onto literally any of the actual franchises. And while you want to encourage original films, frankly, this thing is anything but. Real quick editor's note for this film: if you've seen any other people on YouTube talking about this movie, you will know that they get copyright claims from Universal, so for this segment right here, I'm only using images. Sorry in advance. I don't think I've ever seen one of these legacy sequels misunderstand their original films more than Exorcist Believer. While no film could ever match The Exorcist, I was hoping that at least one person working on this film would understand why the original worked so well, but I knew having hope was useless. Just a boring possession flick that for some reason Universal spent $400 million on to have the Exorcist logo slapped on top of it. Utter trash that ruined a great streak of horror films we've gotten this year, and I really, really, really hope that this is the last time I ever see The Exorcist in a major theater. Not a lot of people saw Hypnotic or probably even know that it's a movie that came out this year. Well, consider yourself one of the lucky ones. Brain dead. There's no other way to describe this movie other than brain dead. Robert Rodriguez really thought he had something here, and it's laughable how this movie absolutely falls apart. And it's all due to the twist. Like, the movie itself for the first 45 minutes or so is your run-of-the-mill action thriller. But immediately once the film reveals the twist, it crashes and burns in spectacular fashion. It thinks the more overly complicated it gets, the better the twist actually is. But it just makes no sense. And it's kind of hilarious in that way. Just an absolute mess of a movie. So from all the bad word of mouth, I was expecting much worse, admittedly, but that doesn't mean what I got was any good. It's all the hallmarks of bad low-budget horror films, and as much as I want to be happy that independent filmmakers were successful, I don't want their success to be for the wrong reasons and to see studios take the wrong lessons from this. And sadly, it looks like this is only the beginning of a very sad new trend that I have a feeling will produce films somehow much worse than this.
The horror. The horror. The horror.
Another movie I have a full lengthy review for, but if the next film on this list hadn't come out, this one would absolutely take the cake for the worst film of the year. It's truly the culmination of everything wrong with summer blockbusters and comic book films as a genre. I truly think that The Flash will be a film we study for years to come, not only for how it bombed to oblivion, but just how it fails at everything that makes a movie fundamentally work. It's the culmination of every wrong decision made in Warner Brothers' quest to create a cinematic universe, with one of the worst third acts of any film this year, and one of the worst performances by any actor this year. A film so terrible, It honestly needs to be seen to be believed. I have no idea how this film, this slapped together hodgepodge of a movie, was given a wide release. It somehow manages to get every single aspect of the movie making process wrong, and it genuinely feels like one of those awful movie tie-in games or one of those god-awful direct-to-video geezer teaser movies that get dumped on streaming, and somehow it got plastered on the big screen. Astoundingly terrible, awful performances, some of the worst green screen you will ever see in a major motion picture, and it is without question the worst film of 2023. But those were my bottom 10 of the year. But there were a lot of other bad movies I saw this year that just didn't crack that bottom 10. So let's go through everything else I saw this year. If you like these movies, that is completely okay. You were entitled to that. But here are the movies that I really didn't care for that also came out this year. Peter Pan and Wendy was very close to taking Little Mermaid's spot, but it at least wasn't nearly 2.5 hours long. No One Will Save You was incredibly underwhelming, and I really didn't understand the hype around it. Get used to that, because there were a lot of movies that were very hyped up to me that just didn't live up to it. The Super Mario Bros. Movie just wasn't for me, and I would recommend my review because I explained my feelings much better there. The Creator was okay, but I kind of found it pretty boring. Susie Searches was a really big disappointment. I didn't know much about the movie going in, but I thought the concept of it sounded interesting, but it was a very bland movie that I think was done much better in a movie like Tragedy Girls. The Nun 2 was better than the first, but that's not saying anything because The Nun is one of the worst horror films I've ever seen. I feel like out of all my rankings, this is the one that I'm going to get the most shit for, but this movie just did nothing for me. I love Fincher's directing, but this story is so played out, and I really don't think this one does anything that unique to set itself apart from another revenge movie. Old Dads was just an hour and 48 minutes of Bill Burr's lesser material. Just watch F is for Family. It's a much funnier and much more heartfelt show. Mathregan was just not it, and it's another one I simply didn't understand the hype around. Leo was also very bad, and I don't quite understand the hype there either. Renfield had a really fun Nicolas Cage performance, but it was sadly lost in the shuffle of a really lame action comedy, and it had some of the worst editing I've seen all year. I really wanted to like Maestro, but I just found it to be a little too desperate for Oscar gold. Transformers Rise of the Beast honestly could have been way worse, but it's still a Transformers movie, so I still don't think it's very good. Wonka wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but Timothée Chalamet is just not the person for this part, and he made this kind of hard to get through at times. Shazam! Fury of the Gods was very underwhelming and just felt like a direct-to-video sequel that got released to theaters. The Marvels was fine. Silent Night had potential, but just was not the movie I wanted it to be. Leave the World Behind somehow had a less complete ending than Fast X, but at least was a competently made movie up until that point. Extraction 2 blew its load in the first 20 minutes, and I don't think it could recover from that. Totally Killer was a movie I've seen done much better, very similar to Susie Searches. If you want a movie that does this concept in a much more entertaining way, I recommend The Final Girls from, I believe, 2014. Elemental was similar in that I've seen this studio do this concept much better in other movies, so this one was just kind of mediocre. I actually think Please Don't Destroy Guys are some of the best parts of recent SNL, but stretching their humor out to 100 minutes just doesn't work. It's no Wayne's World, but it's certainly better than It's Pat. I have such a love-hate relationship with the VHS franchise because on the one hand, I love the idea of its format, and when it has good segments, the segments are excellent. But the problem is they bury their best ideas under a mountain of underdeveloped and half-cooked stories that end just when they start to get interesting, and 85 was no different. I have a soft spot for the first murder mystery, so I had about the same reaction to this latest flick. The mystery is certainly much weaker, but Aniston and Sandler's chemistry still keeps the movie afloat for the majority of its runtime. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumanium as an MCU film I think will get worse and worse the more times I watch it, especially given the recent developments. And finally, Asteroid City. I don't like Wes Anderson. I've tried my hardest, and I've really tried with this one, and it simply compounded my feelings that he's too much style over substance. The performances are there, and visually this is by far my favorite films of his to look at. However, the lack of story just made this one kind of a chore to get through for me. Also, you have Margot Robbie, one of the most talented performers working in the industry today, and you only use her for one scene. And surprise, surprise, it's the best scene in the whole damn movie. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my final ranking of the year. That was all the movies I watched in 2023. If you want to keep up with what I'm watching in 2024, then you should go follow me on Letterboxd. That's where I post more regularly, honestly, than YouTube, because writing Letterboxd reviews is a lot easier than editing, recording, and shooting video. But again, there are a lot of movies that are coming out in 2024 that I'm really excited for. I'm hoping to get a few more reviews out there, but obviously this is a pretty big year for me personally because I'm graduating college. So I don't know how often videos are going to be coming out, so I'm going to try and make sure to get a few more out before May rolls around. But I want to thank everybody also who has been watching a lot of my stuff. I also want to thank everyone who has been watching a lot of my stuff here in 2023. Obviously, this was a pretty big year for me. I did a lot of really cool things this year. I didn't post as regularly as I have maybe in the past, but again, I was working on a lot bigger projects, and I was really happy with how those projects turned out, and I hope that everyone enjoyed. Hopefully, you all stick around into the new year, and again, I want to thank everybody. I hope you have a great 2024, and I will see you all next time. Real quick, these are all the movies that I did not get a chance to check out this year for one reason or another. I feel like some of these will definitely change my rankings quite a bit, especially Godzilla Minus One. That is one that I really wanted to check out, but I just did not get the opportunity to go see it in theaters, which is where I really wanted to see it. Maybe closer to Oscars, I will do a follow-up video reviewing the movies I missed, maybe a catch-up video, an updated ranking, but these are the movies that I did not get to check out. Everything else that I've seen this year, though, is up on the table, so let's get into them.